طيب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم. أنور فتح الرحمن أحمد ضفع الله من مؤسسة الباحثين السودانيين. اليوم يسرنا ويسعدنا إنه يكون معنا واحد من الأساتذة الكبار الخبراء في مجال السياسة العامة، طارق هاشم هلال. طارق خبير بتاع سياسات ورائد أعمال، عنده أكثر من 12 سنة experience في السياسة ووضع السياسات والبحث العلمي والبزنس. اتخرج من معهد ماساتشوستس MIT ومن هارفارد، واتخرج من جونز هوبكنز ومن نوتنغهام. ما شاء الله عنده تشكيلة أوروبية أمريكية في التعليم العالي. وكان دايركتور في conflict dynamics international. كان هو دايركتور بتاع السياسة في كرايسيس UK، وكان محلل للمجموعة العالمية International Crisis Group في البنك الدولي، وسينيور بروجرام مانجر في الناشونال ديموكراتيك انستيتيوت. طارق كوميونيكيتر من الطراز الأول، يعني excellent writer، ودي حاجة خبرناها احنا في السودان من التوك المشهور بتاعه عبر السودان في تيدكس خرطوم 2012. عنده ريكورد يعني في قيادة تيمز مختلفة لحل مشاكل معقدة في السياسة. برضو عنده يعني unique quality of political يعني delivering large scale policy and political programs under pressure. He has worked closely with business, academia, not-for-profit, multilaterals and advocacy groups in United Kingdom, USA and Africa. السيشن بتاعتنا دي هتكون عن how to get into the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. عبارة عن أسئلة وأجوبة. طارق هيشرح للناس. طارق يعني he's comfortable speaking in English، فغالبا هيتكلم باللغة الإنجليزية، لكن بيفهم الأسئلة بتاعت الناس لو بقت بالسوداني بالدارجي بأي لغة ثانية. فطارق مرحب بك في welcome to the Sudanese Researchers webinars.
Thank you for having me.
So yeah, I want to get into Harvard Kennedy School. How can I?
أول حاجة أنا داير أعتذر، هتكلم باللغة الإنجليزية لأنه هقدر أعبر عن فكري بطريقة أسهل باللغة الإنجليزية، لكن بفهم السوداني عادي، فلو أي سؤال بالعربي ما في مشكلة. So let me begin. I went to Harvard. I'll start off by explaining my background and why I think I'm qualified to tell you a little bit about how to get into Harvard Kennedy School of Government. So I'm 39 years old. I attended the Harvard Kennedy School 2 years ago. I went as a mid-career. So there's different programs at the Harvard Kennedy School, and one of the programs they have is for people who are midway through their professional careers. And what that means is anywhere between sort of 10 to 15 years worth of experience in the professional field. So people who have gone to university, done their undergraduate, gone to work, and then come back to study. So that's how I went. I got into the school, and really that's the main reason why I'm here to speak to you, because I have the experience of attending the Harvard Kennedy School and successfully getting through their admissions process. So let me begin by saying the following. If you are ambitious and committed and relatively intelligent, you don't have to be brilliant, just of average intelligence, but you're committed and you're ambitious, you can get into the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. I think the most important thing or quality you have to get in is to believe you can get in. You know, places like the Harvard Kennedy School intimidate many people. Harvard has this reputation for being an elite place, which only a very few people get into. And that is true. It is a very elite place, and not many people go there. But you could be one of those people. I'm absolutely confident of that. The Harvard Kennedy School focuses on governance and government. So, you should have an interest in politics and policy if you want to attend. But it attracts people from a very wide range of professional backgrounds. Business, obviously politics and government, but also not-for-profits. Many people come from the charity or not-for-profit sector. People from multilateral organizations like the World Bank and the UN. So there's a really diverse background of people who attend. The program, the Harvard Kennedy School, has three sort of major programs. One is the MPP, the Masters in Public Policy, and that's for people in their sort of mid to late 20s. So you've had 2 or 3 years worth of work experience, and you want to go back to school, you would apply for the MPP program, the mid-career, the Masters in Public Policy. There is also an MPA program, Masters in Public Administration, for people with 5 to 7 years. So people in their early 30s. And then there is the mid-career program, people between sort of 10 to 15 years worth of experience. And the age of people who go to that, join that program tend to be in their late 30s, early 40s and older. The program itself is really designed to give people quite practical skills in the art and science of governance. So you would study the kind of courses available are economics, obviously political science. There's a lot of focus on what the Americans call soft skills, communication, persuasion, negotiation. These are the areas that the Harvard Kennedy School very much excels in. And they do some excellent, very practical courses where you can learn how to apply these skills in real time. They also, because it's Harvard, they also attract many of the great and the good from around the world. So one of the most exciting things about the Harvard Kennedy School is that you get to meet prominent people from all around the world, politicians and businessmen, but mainly politicians. And you'll get anyone from, the President of the United States through to, leaders from South America, Africa, Asia, and you get an opportunity to meet them and talk to them and engage with them. Once you leave the Kennedy School, of course, you carry with you the title of a Harvard graduate, which can be very useful in terms of communicating to people that you are able, and it gives you a great network. So that's the kind of the benefits of the program and how it's structured. Now the question of this session, which is how do you get in? So the Harvard Kennedy School has an application once a year. In December, early December. The deadline can vary, but it's normally around December 5th to December 8th. So there's still time to apply if you want to get in. The application process really consists, if you are Sudanese, it consists of 3 parts. The first is a series of essays. You have to write 3 essays. And this is really the hardest part of the application, because it doesn't come naturally to many people around the world to write the kind of essays that the Harvard Kennedy School wants you to write. For Americans, it's very easy. It's very natural. It's part of their culture. But for Sudanese, because you have to talk about yourself. You have to talk about how amazing you are. And you have to talk about how you're going to change the world. And you have to talk about your mission and your vision. And these are things that we just don't do in Sudan. And so it can be very difficult to write those essays, even though they're actually very short, usually about 500 to 800 words. And actually, if you understand how to write them, very simple. There's a formula, like a mathematical formula, and there's a way of writing them. You have to be authentic. You have to tell the truth about what your goals and aims and aspirations are, but you have to do it in a certain format if you want to maximize your opportunity of getting in. The second component of the application process can be an interview. They don't always interview people, but on occasion they will. If, for example, they have maybe some questions or some doubts about maybe what you're doing or where you're going, they may want to have an extra layer of an interview. So that happens for some people. They have an interview, and that can be face-to-face, or it can be over Skype or over the phone. The third component of the application, which does not apply to people from Sudan, is a GRE, which is the Americans. So the Americans have this online testing method. But if you are from anywhere but the United States and Europe, you don't actually have to take that test, which is, it's not a hard test, but it's good that you don't have to take it because it's complicated. You have to practice for it. Usually involves a little fee. And I think you actually may have to travel to take it in other parts of. You can't take the test in Sudan, I don't think. You have to take it in Egypt, Ethiopia. So for Sudanese, there's actually just the two components of the application: the essays and the interview. And the interview doesn't always apply. So that's really it. And I think a lot of people are intimidated by the process, especially in Sudan, because you have to go online, there's lots of forms, it looks complicated, but it's not complicated. It's just those two things: 3 essays and an interview. Now, of course, you have to provide information on your previous education. So you have to show that you've performed well in the past and that you've got a good resume, you've got really interesting work experience, and you've got a good academic track record. But that's the case in any application you would make. So the question then becomes, how do you maximize your opportunity for success? How do you maximize the chances of success? First thing I would do is study their website. Learn everything you can about the Harvard Kennedy School and the values that underpin the school. And see if you're a fit. The best way to succeed is to be someone whose values and aspirations and hopes and dreams is consistent with that of the Kennedy School. And if you are, then that increases your chances of getting in. So study the website, make sure that this is a place that you would like to go to because you share the school's values and the school's approach. I'm sorry, it's very noisy, there's helicopters. The second is to reach out to the school early on, speak to someone from admissions, and express your interest. Communicate with them. Tell them a little bit about yourself, why you want to apply, how excited, and if you are excited by the school, express that. And do that early, because that really demonstrates to them commitment from you. If you have any opportunity to get to the United States and actually visit the school and meet with the people who are responsible for admissions, I would strongly recommend doing that. Finally, the Kennedy School has events all around the world. They don't do them in Sudan, but they do them regionally. So they sometimes have an event in Dubai, in Egypt, in Kenya. It's really worth finding out when those events are and attending them. You can find out when those events are by going on their website and signing up for the admissions email update. And they will send you an email saying, we are holding a recruitment event in such and such a place. The final thing that can be helpful is if someone from the Harvard Kennedy School recommends you. Someone says, I know this person and I strongly recommend them. Now, that's not as easily done as it is said, because if someone's going to recommend you, they do really have to know you and they do have to feel confident. Because if I recommend someone to go to the Harvard Kennedy School, that's my reputation on the line. So I have to be confident that that person is a good person, a good fit, has the skills and abilities and interests and aspirations to fit into that school. So, but if you know someone who can do that for you, then that can also be helpful. And then finally, is the essay writing process. And for that, my strongest recommendation is to start early and to really test your ideas out with people who've been at the school or with Americans who have been through a process like applying to the Kennedy School, applying to another American university, to make sure that your essay is written in a way that really highlights your skills, your accomplishments, your values, and your vision for yourself in the future. Those 4 things. And I think one of the biggest challenges in that, if I'm really honest, is cultural. And like I know I'm sort of emphasizing this again and again, but I feel that I have seen many people trip up over sort of this essay writing process, because it's a particular way of talking and thinking and expressing yourself, and it doesn't come naturally to everyone. And it's actually something you acquire through effort. So make sure you give yourself plenty of time to write the essays, to get feedback on them from people who have gone through a similar process, who have had experience applying to American schools, so that you really present yourself in the optimal way. And if you combine that with contact to the school, then I think you're really increasing your chances of success. The final thing I should say on all of this, not so much related to admissions, but related to the practicality of getting into the Harvard Kennedy School, relates to money. Now, money is always a big concern. To study in the United States, and to study at the Harvard Kennedy School, costs $60,000 US a year. So if you're going for 2 years for the MPP program or the MPA program, that's $120,000 in fees alone. Then you would expect to spend between $30,000 and $40,000 in living costs. To rent a place in Harvard, in Cambridge, looking at a minimum of $21,000 for rent, and then you've got living costs, and that can be, depending on how you live, can be anywhere between $10,000 and $20,000. So you're looking at a grand total of $120,000, $150,000, $180,000, maybe as much as $200,000 to attend Harvard Kennedy School. And when you hear a figure like that, I'm sure many, many people will feel very intimidated. Where can you get $200,000 from? The answer is you don't have to. Harvard Kennedy School is one of the best endowed schools in the world. Harvard generally is one of the best. I think Harvard is actually the best endowed university in the world. And when I say endowed, as in they have the most money, to put it simply. The Kennedy School has in its bank account as much as $850 million. They commit a substantial amount of money, substantial amount of that, to scholarships. And there are many, many scholarships that you can apply to within the school. There are also scholarships available outside of the school. The truth is that the majority of scholarships are available from the Harvard Kennedy School. It's easier, like, what I'm saying is the best source of scholarship is probably the Kennedy School itself, but there are a couple of others. So there's the Fulbright Scholarship, which is now available to Sudanese. There are scholarships from Soros Foundation. I mean, we have access to the internet now, so write in scholarships and do search on Google, scholarships to the United States, and you'll find a lot of useful information. The best source of information, though, is the Harvard Kennedy School website. Go to it and go to it early. You need to give yourself time, because a lot of scholarships have deadlines that are very much earlier than the Harvard Kennedy School deadline. If they are scholarships that are separate from Harvard, coming from other sources then they often have earlier deadlines. So for example, the Fulbright Scholarship, which is available to Sudanese now, is I think in October, whereas the Harvard Kennedy School admissions is December. So this means doing something that, forgive me for saying, is very un-Sudanese. You need to start really early. Not on time, but early. I mean, you want to start thinking about your funding at least a year before you go. So if you want to get into the Harvard Kennedy School next year, so for 2018, so your application is going to be December 2017, let's say, you want to start doing your research and thinking about how you're going to fund it from now. Truth is, you have a very good chance of success. It may not feel that way, but you do. There are a good number of scholarships available to people to study in the United States. But the best source of scholarships is actually the Kennedy School itself. And what you have to do, and this is very counterintuitive, again, this is a cultural difference, because I would think to myself, I need to get the money first and then I'll apply. No, apply first and then figure out the money. when it comes to scholarships from Harvard. Scholarships from outside of Harvard, you need to apply early and you need to apply separately. Scholarships within Harvard, you apply for them as you apply for the school. If you get in, then they'll consider you for scholarships. Do you see? So when you're applying, you'll see this when you come to apply online. You'll go through the admissions process, you'll write your essays, you'll upload your information on your work experience and your academic background, and then there will be a number of scholarships, and they'll say to you, would you like to apply for financial aid? Say yes, and apply for more than one scholarship. There is one of the best scholarships that's available to Sudanese is supplied by the United Arab Emirates, and that's a scholarship that you'll find once you get into the system. And every year, the UAE sponsors 10 people from around the Arab world. And those scholarships are available for Sudanese. It's a full ride. So that means they pay for your accommodation, they give you some spending money, and they pay for your education, the 60,000. And there are other scholarships that are equally generous. So my strong kind of message on this, don't be intimidated by the money. It seems like a huge amount of money, but it can be found in scholarships. Worst case scenario, you can borrow some of it. The American system does have a way of loaning money to people. Although actually, I take that there may be some restrictions if you're Sudanese. If you're just Sudanese, if you hold another passport, then you can usually get, the sanctions limit what the Americans can loan you, but not what they can give you. So they can give you money for free, but they can't loan you money. Yeah, so start early. Don't be intimidated by the process. Remember, money is available, and be persistent and be confident. There are really bright people that go to Harvard Kennedy School, but there's no reason why you can't be amongst them. And I think for me, what I have seen is, when I grew up in Sudan, my father's Sudanese, I'm proudly Sudanese myself. I lived in Sudan for the last 5 years. And I think one of the biggest challenges we face in Sudan is a lack of confidence. And so what I would want to really communicate to you is believe in yourself, have the confidence, look at the application process, look at the requirements. If you feel you're a fit, then apply. Don't be intimidated by the fact that it's America and it's Harvard and it's expensive and it's complicated and there are so many deadlines. It's all very doable. It's very achievable. So I would, and I think one of the things that I was so proud of when I was at Harvard was the number of Sudanese who were there. Either Sudanese from Sudan directly or Sudanese who were like me, a mix, of British Sudanese, American Sudanese. When I was studying at Harvard, the total number of Sudanese from all of the elite schools in Boston and Cambridge, so that included that included MIT, Harvard, Tufts, Fletcher. There were maybe 30 Sudanese, which is fantastic for a country that really struggles economically, and there were far more Sudanese than there were Egyptians, for example. So what I would love to see is even more, and there's no reason why that can't happen if people apply and follow the advice that I've given. So good luck, and get those applications in. If you're really keen, you can get it in for December. December is still the deadline, so you could be in for next year, 2017. If you want a little more time to search for scholarships and get your essays just right, then you can aim for 2018 and you've got a full year. But start working now. Start thinking about how you're going to fund it, how you're going to write those essays. Make sure you reach out to the school and talk to the right people, speak to the admissions, express your interest, and go for it. Thank you.
شكرا جزيلا طارق. This was so informative. So بتذكر لما تلاقينا في بوسطن نفسها ومشينا في كامبريدج، مشينا هارفارد ومشينا وين لفينا كده. في واحدة من الحاجات اللي قلت لي انه هارفارد الجامعة نفسها بتديك قروش على اساس انك انت تلاقي تمنجل مع البروفيسورز والناس في الكوميونتي، يعني مش كده؟
Wallahi, I mean, if you have projects, you can find ways of getting funded. And that's the other thing. Like, once you get into the school, there are little pots of money available here and there, you know, for grants, for projects, to travel, to work, to hold events. There is money available within the school. But it's really about demonstrating that you share their values, that you have something to bring to the table, as the Americans would say, that you're going to make a difference in the world. Yeah.
So basically, my question is about what makes Harvard Harvard, like this strong reputation. الناس كلها عسلت هارفرد. لما تقول هارفرد ما في واحد يعني قرا جامعه ساي ما بكون عارفها ولا كده. يعني انت عشت الاكسبيرينس دي، شنو يعني كيف الاحساس بتاع انك تكون هارفرد ستودنت ولا ريسيرشر ولا كده؟
I mean, it's all the standard things really. They do attract excellence. So there are lots of very, very smart people. They attract superstars. It's not the same as smart people. Very famous people are not always the most intelligent, but they also attract very famous people. And they have a lot of money and resources, which means that they can do anything. You know, they can hold the most amazing events. They can host presidents and, you know, parliamentarians. And this is in the case of the Kennedy School. So they really, it's really a combination of, you know, being very well financed, having real, you know, quality research and thinking, and attracting the, you know, the best and the brightest, and using those two to attract the powerful and the influential. And it's a wonderful school. It really is. It's you know, there's the facilities, the sense of possibility and ambition, the kinds of people that you get to meet, some really wonderful people. And if you're coming from Sudan, you know, the American higher education experience is really quite phenomenal. I mean, I would say actually, anywhere you come from, the Americans do higher education in a way that is just really unique and really outstanding. I don't think anyone does it like them in the way that they build community, which is so valuable, because once you've been to the school, the people you've studied with will form your network for the rest of your life. People will help each other out, support each other. Even if you haven't been in the same year, in the same cohort, just by virtue of having gone to Harvard, if you reach out to someone else who went to Harvard, they'll help you out. So you build this amazing network. You get exposed to the highest standards of thinking and work and, you know, ideas. And it sort of imbues you and instills in you a sense of confidence and possibility, which is very powerful.
طيب سؤال ثاني، الامبلويبيليتي، يعني after graduating from Harvard، يعني الواحد ممكن يتعين في اي حته بما فيها امريكا نفسها. يعني انا جاي من السودان اخذ الماسترز وتشتغل في امريكا ولا كيف النظام كيف؟
So okay, so two thoughts on here. One technical and practical, and one sort of more reflective. So the very technical one, if you've studied in the United States to do a master's, you're entitled to 1 year's worth of work in the US. So that would allow you to do 2 years and then 1 year work. Maybe longer if you've done 2 years actually, but you need to. I mean, when you get to Harvard, they will tell you about there is a sense of, you know, people who will advise you on the process of applying for and receiving a work permit. But essentially, if you studied in the United States in an institution of higher education, you're entitled for a period of employment by an American organization in the United States. A lot of people then succeed in turning that into a longer term opportunity. So they, you know, they do really well, and their employers like them, so they then help sponsor them and keep them on. So it is possible to stay in the United States after higher education, certainly for a year or two through the work permit that you get. However, I have to say that as a guarantee of employment, or as Harvard is overrated. I mean, it depends where you go. If you go to HBS, Harvard Business School, your chances of employment are higher than if you go to the school of, I don't know, I don't want to be insulting.
Okay, to offend someone.
So maybe the school of like theology, you know, if you studied religions versus studying business, then I don't think that's controversial to say. Those who study business have a better chance of getting a job than those who study religion, except maybe in Sudan. But I would say that there was a time in the 1960s, 1970s, maybe even up until the 1980s, where going to Harvard was a guarantee of employment. You know, like there's amazing stories from the 1960s. You know, young men leaving Harvard and going straight into the White House. You know, there were so few Harvard people, but you know, it's a world of supply and demand now, right? Sorry, it always has been. It's a world of supply and demand, and the supply of Harvard graduates is actually quite big now. There's also lots of other fantastic schools out there. You know, Stanford and MIT, and that's just in the United States. And you've got Oxford and Cambridge and the Sorbonne and all the other great schools around the world. So, you know, it's very important to be clear that getting a Harvard education is not a guarantee of getting a great job. A lot of people still struggle afterwards. And the kinds of jobs that the Harvard Kennedy School prepares you for, generally, but not exclusively, is working in government, multilaterals, like the World Bank and the UN, not-for-profits. That's kind of where a good portion go. There are others who go into business and private sector. And I have a friend of mine who works for one of the tech companies, Google, and so on and so forth. So it is possible to get into those spaces. But I think some people come to Harvard thinking like after it, the world is going to be theirs. The truth is, you still have to get out there and fight. You have to go out there and compete because there's a lot of competition. And the supply of clever people who go to great schools is now very big. And the availability of great jobs is relatively small. So don't expect the world to open up. But you're still better off with a Harvard degree than not having a Harvard degree.
Okay, that's fair enough. So I got a question about Johns Hopkins, not Harvard Kennedy School so far. So I guess we need another session about how to get into Johns Hopkins later, maybe.
Well, I would say, I mean, I could speak briefly on that and just say that.
Oh, go ahead.
The process to getting to Johns Hopkins is very similar to the one of getting into Harvard. Very, very similar process. In fact, all American schools are the same. One of the things I would recommend, if you're going to take the time and effort to apply to one American school, apply to 5, because you can adapt your essays and your process to get to others, and that just increases your chances of success, right? Mm-hmm. So if you've invested a lot of time building up, you know, your profile for the Harvard Kennedy School, apply for Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies, apply for CEPA at the University of Columbia, apply for Fletcher at Tufts, you know, because you can duplicate your effort, and every time you do it, and the amount of effort you have to put in is smaller relative to the benefit that you get. So apply for more than one school.
Okay. So what is the biggest lesson learned out of your 2 years at Harvard?
Believe in yourself. I know that sounds very cliched and very cheesy, but you have to really believe in yourself. And I want to say that I know dozens and dozens of Sudanese, friends of mine, friends of friends, family, who could get into any of these top schools in the United States. The only reason they don't is because they don't take the time to apply.
That's a huge lesson learned. Thank you طارق. شكرا لك لزمنك، وعارفك انك اليوم من اجتماع لاجتماع وحتى اضطرينا اجل اسبوع كان البتاع. Last message to the Sudanese researchers. We are nearly 100,000 members now.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, I'm very happy to have been able to go through this session. I hope that it helps. I apologize again that it's in English. My Arabic is not that bad, but my English is much, much better. Yeah, get out there, apply to these schools, pick up the skills, build the network, and then get on and change the world.
لأور السودان إن شاء الله.
Our Sudan.
يلا طارق، شكرا جزيلا لك، وإن شاء الله نلاقيك في سيشن جاية في مواضيع ثانية مختلفة إن شاء الله.
إن شاء الله. All right. Best of luck. يلا حبيبي، مع السلامة.